Good morning, good evening, good night, wherever you may be watching this transmission. Guys, Zimbabwe right now is in a journey to nowhere. It's been like that for the last quarter and a half. Things are getting pretty bad there. I've been watching Zimbabwe for the last 4 years. They had a bit of a reset 2 years ago when there was a military coup, a takeover. New president came in and pledged to make the country better. And I guess world powers let him go in with the good grace of saying, okay, fix this country if you can. You got the people behind you. You got some of the people behind you. You got the military behind you, which is most important. And unfortunately, in the last 3 months, Zimbabwe's been entering a journey to nowhere, economically, financially. Zimbabwe has got a huge problem. It's landlocked, right? So it's in there in Africa. It's west of Portuguese Africa, Mozambique. If you go west of Portuguese Africa, Zimbabwe sits right there. And not having ports or anything, it makes it a little bit tough to export a lot of their minerals and a lot of their, things of importance, right? Basically to get it out to shore to export. So it's a landlocked country, right? But ever since the last quarter, they're just headed to a journey of nowhere. And unions say salaries tied to United States currency is the way to cushion public sector employees against hyperinflation. So they want the public sector employees now, and we're talking about these riot police. We're talking about anyone that's in the public sector are demanding basically American dollars. Anti-riot police barricade the way for Harare protesters who are demanding that wages, which have lost as much as 95% of their purchasing power. Pay attention, guys. 95% of their purchasing power keep pace with inflation in Zimbabwe. So basically, a Coca-Cola would probably cost you $1 million, $2 million of their dollars, right? And then let's say back before the coup, let's say 4 years before that. So let's say 7 years ago, a Coke would probably cost you 100 Zimbabwe dollars, for an example. Now it's like $1 million. So your money just doesn't buy you anything, right? Baton wielding. Zimbabwean police officers blocked a handful of government workers from marching to the Ministry of Finance and Economic Development's office today to present a petition against wages that have been decimated by hyperinflation. So let's see here. Here he goes. As economic crisis deepens, Zimbabwe's president pleads patience. So remember, guys, Zimbabwe's Emerson, his name is Emerson. Emerson. He basically came into power with a hostile takeover, and the people basically granted him, okay, let's do this. Okay, you're here to make the difference. Somebody else comes in, and right now they're in huge monetary failure, economic failure. Exports look like they're steady. Iron ore, gold, silver, bit of uranium. They have some exports that seem to be running smoothly, but you would think the people wouldn't be suffering so much. So Zimbabweans are grappling with an acute shortage of fuel, electricity, as well as soaring prices, right? So let's go back here. Decimated by hyperinflation. In the southern African nation, protesters described their pay as peanuts and demanded a living wage. So, living wage, it's so really complicated to explain what's happening with a lot of the youth in Zimbabwe. Several people that I have spoken to personally are actually digging for gold. They go to some field out in the middle of nowhere, like, believe it or not, like just these areas close to rivers or anything. They just start digging in the ground and they look for gold, and they find like little dusts of gold. They take that and they go buy food. And the younger people are okay because they could dig all day for gold, but it's the more elderly people and the people having a tough time picking up a shovel or a pickaxe to try and break some ground to find gold dust. And a lot of some of the grocery stores outside of the capital, maybe 40 minutes to an hour drive away, are only accepting US dollars or gold. And that's it. Maybe silver if you show up with a silver bar or something. But yeah. Government workers from marching to the military finance of economic peanuts. We got this living wage. Zimbabwe's President Emerson Mnangagwa has banned several opposition protests and faces charges that he has dealt with protesters in heavy-handed way since taking over a military coup in November 2017. That's the one I just spoke about. For months now, police have been manning Harare's streets trying to deter mass protesters as the economic situation worsens. So I have a friend of mine who's actually reporting there from Mozambique. In Mozambique has closed two of its major border crossings to kind of stop people from moving further east into East Africa, further east into Mozambique. So they're closing the border, or they closed several checkpoints, or several borders were closed, right? Along it's a long border, right? Workers conveyed in the capital on Wednesday after Tuesday meeting between government officials and the union representing government workers. The Civil Service Apex Council only widened differences. The workers want the government to peg their salaries to United States dollar so that even if the value of the local currency declines, their purchasing power remains consistent. So they did this in Cuba for many years, where Cuba just ran off American dollars for many years because the Cuban peso had so many problems in the 70s and 80s. Up until the 90s, it was just a disaster. So what they did was they just used American dollars. Workers got paid in American dollars. Everything ran off American dollars in Cuba. I've been to Cuba several times, and it was just only American dollars they deal with in the small markets. And this, very hard to find Cuban pesos. Right now, it's an abundance of Cuban pesos now. Despite getting prior permission from the police to march along designated routes in the city on their way to the finance ministry, the protesters were restricted to an area almost 1 kilometer away from the Minister of Finance office of this gentleman here. Union leaders at the scene asked police to allow them to deliver the petition to Nikub's office, but their request was ignored. Instead, dozens of anti-riot police erected a human barricade and barred protesters from proceeding to the ministry's offices. Cecilia Alejandra, president of the Civil Service Apex Council, said heavy police presence at the protests venue had intimidated would-be protesters. We're not expecting the low turnout, but that can attribute to the presence of these police tankers, police wielding batons, and their sheer numbers, she said. The police who came are the ones who normally just beat up people. We were expecting ordinary cops. Alexander said the government has indirectly denied us the right to march. They have given us new conditions. We were supposed to march to the government's Ganavi building and the government complex to present our petition, but they are only allowing us allowing us to go around the block and come here. When Alexander attempts to pass, she says police move swiftly to deny her entry. Wow. No longer able to survive on wages. So this is a big deal because you're going to get several million people that can't live off, So we're going to see Venezuela 2.0, but it's clever. I'm reading this article because the incredible amount of faith they have in the US dollar, right? Zimbabwean government workers marched to demand that wages pegged to the US dollar in their capital. So the central bank, let me see here. The Civil Apex Council represents 230,000 workers, excluding those in the health and security sectors. The union wants the lowest paid government employees to earn equivalent of 9,500 Zimbabwe dollars. That's $475 at commonly used black market rates, compared to 1,023 Zimbabwe dollars. That's $51.50 they earn currently. Wow. So basically, in the black market, I mean, you could get next to nothing. But at least if you get 9,500 Zimbabwe dollars, right, and that's commonly roughly 475. Let's go. I want to do a conversion rate here, but let's just check here. Zimbabwe civil servants in unprecedented strike for better wages. This is from a few hours ago in the New York Times. Government workers say their earnings are disappearing under skyrocketing inflation. So there's going to be mass starvation, guys, in Southeast Africa. So government workers clash with police. Here it is again. Another article from today. And doctors and nurses as well. And inflation in Southern Africa and the Southern African nation is running at about 300%, according to the International Monetary Fund figures, and has prompted walkouts by doctors and nurses as well. So you're going to start seeing the public sectors basically move, especially skilled doctors and everybody that's in the public sector. They're just going to start moving either east to Mozambique or west to Angola. But Portuguese Africa is either side of Zimbabwe, so they go east or west, right, to west to Angola or east to Mozambique. So this is an important thing. And I wanted to read this article because they have so much faith in the US dollar, and and it's one of the stronger currencies right now. I'm not going to doubt that. It did take a little bit of tumble right now with the whole impeachment bullcrap that's going on. I bought a bunch of gold and silver today when it dropped again, because it's just going to go back to where it was in the next coming week or the week after. And that's just how the game plays. But here we go. So what do you guys think? So the public sector, so you would think the governments at least would pay a lot of their... You see, now it's not the citizens. The citizens are starving. It's the public sector now that's not getting the funding. So they could keep printing money. The only way out of this is to create jobs, up your exports, produce, export, and trade. Then you could tax your employees' wages to help offset your deficits in your country. But unfortunately, they're not even at that. So with the amount of public sector jobs, what are the average citizen at? It's right here. Average citizen is struggling. Hopes the economy will quickly rebound. Who took over was deposed in a coup in November 2017, have faded fast, with Zimbabwe's grappling with acute shortages of fuel, electricity, as well as soaring prices. In the State of the Nation address in the Parliament of Zimbabwe on Tuesday, a speech that was like 2 days ago boycotted the main opposition movement for democratic change. Of course, they're going to oppose that. I'm aware of the pain being experienced by the poor and the marginalized. Getting the economy working again from being dead will require time, patience, unity of purpose, and perseverance. Mamaga said. Zimbabwe has suspended the publication of official annual inflation data since August 1st in its last official figures. Inflation hit more than 175% in June, its highest level since hyperinflation under Mugabe wiped the economy in 2009. So it was 2009 was when they had the trillion or zillion dollar bill. So power outages too. I forgot about that. Zimbabwe is in mass power outages, forcing women to deliver children by candlelight. Zimbabwe's healthcare is crumbling as millions cannot access medical treatment. And Zimbabwe is getting yet another currency. So guys, we're going to start to see Southeast Africa fall apart. It's going to move north, north, north until, just like it did back in, I think it was in 56 or 57, when it reached all the way up to Egypt. So economically, so was it 54 or 55? I can't remember when it was the huge economic uncertainty. Basically started in not South Africa, but Zimbabwe area, right up, all the way up to, pretty much all the way up to Egypt. Trade was just completely shut down. Let me know what you guys say. What you guys say? What you guys think? I think if they could properly manage their country by actually creating more jobs that could be taxed, so wages could be taxed, and create a fund for the elderly, like a social security, some crap like that. Then this way, it gives people something to work towards, and then this way, if they could up their exports, if they could up their production, and get more people producing, and maybe start privatizing some gold mines and actually start getting their own government instead of like foreign mines to come in and mine out their stuff and give the people peanuts. Maybe do something for the people. I don't know. There's a lot of things. There's a lot of ways, to get around this. In my opinion, I think Zimbabwe's constitution needs to be rewritten, and they need to set the country up, because once the people are always getting the short end of the sticks, this short end of the stick, you'll never see the end of the protesting and the resetting of the currency. Let me know what you guys think in the comments below. Very interesting how they want to peg to the US dollar. Let me know, comment below.